Have you ever noticed yourself repeating the same patterns? Relationships, jobs, work, friendships, health, arguments. The same experiences seem to keep showing up in different forms. We've all been told that we can change our lives, but what does change actually look like? The thing is, I don't think most people have a motivation issue. I think it goes beyond that. I think they're actually skipping the first important steps to creating change. And today I want to walk you through the first 4. These are 4 things that have to happen before lasting change becomes possible. They're observation, awareness, self-responsibility, and intentionality. Step 1, observation. You cannot change what you refuse to observe. When we are children, we are naturally curious about the world. And for most of us, sadly, over time, we are taught to replace that curiosity with judgment. If you are struggling to be curious about the world, to have genuine curiosity, it is okay to understand that you have to learn it. You have to relearn it. You have to teach yourself how to be curious again. You have to be curious about, for example, if you have disordered eating like I do, observing your eating patterns, observing the emotions that come up around it. If you have struggled with friendships and relationships in your life, observing, 1, the people that you're choosing to step into relationship with, but also observing yourself, observing the emotional patterns, the thought patterns that are showing up. Understanding your relationship dynamics and even your work dynamics. Observing where you procrastinate. Observing what you're avoiding constantly, even if it's in minor ways. Observation is the first thing that will change your life for eternity, for the rest of your life. Because once you see things, you cannot unsee them. Even if some people try to suppress them, it will still be there, lingering in your mind. So we first have to teach ourselves how to be curious again, how to be curious about the people around us, the things around us, curious about ourselves, curious about, whoa, where did that thought come from? Or, wow, I'm feeling this inside right now, and I don't like it. Instead of attaching to not liking it and then judging yourself and shaming yourself and shutting down about it. There's a very big difference when we approach ourselves with curiosity. Every moment that you choose to step in with curiosity and with openness and with wondering offers you the possibility to create change in your life, to observe these patterns that you have, to observe yourself with compassion instead of with judgment, observing our judgments and just being curious, not making it mean anything about ourselves or anything about anyone else. This observation is what eventually brings us to a new awareness, a new understanding of ourself or of the world. Maybe you're observing your eating behaviors because you have binge tendencies. And maybe through that observation, you suddenly have this awareness of, oh my gosh, every time that I feel like I'm not being heard, I binge. And that awareness then is what leads us into the next step so that we can actually create change from there. But it must start with observing ourselves, coming to new awareness, and sometimes the awareness comes in steps. So maybe at first it's like, gosh, I'm aware that I'm continuing to binge a lot recently and I don't know where this is coming from. Great, that's a beautiful awareness to have. Now keep moving forward. Keep observing until you realize, oh, you know, I had this conversation today with my boss and I realized that I wasn't being heard. I was being dismissed. And then I went home and I binge ate. That's really interesting. So because I wasn't heard, I started to binge. Interesting. That's a new awareness. Keep observing. Keep moving forward. Maybe you have another situation where you're at the grocery and someone is talking to the person in front of you and they're making chit chat and they're laughing, but when it's your turn, they don't really talk to you and they dismiss you and you have no idea why, but then you go home and you binge. Through this observation and through these moments where we become aware of the way that I'm feeling, it's different than if we were to say, gosh, that grocery store clerk is so judgmental. I can't believe they didn't even talk to me. They didn't even acknowledge me. And they were making best friends with the person in front of me. There are so many times where we make these assumptions. And that's another thing to observe. Observe where you're making stories, where you're creating truth, where you don't have all the information. What you can observe is, wow, I took that really personally. And then that later led me to binge. Where can you take ownership of your experience? So over time, observation becomes awareness. To our step 2. This is not just about what happened or what story am I making about the situation. It's about what role did I play in my own decision making, in my own experience. Because I can't control that grocery clerk and how they treated me versus how they treated someone else, but I can control the way that I hold myself through that, in the way that I come to understand myself through that, and the decisions that I make later because of it. Oftentimes in that scenario, when the person goes home to binge, they're not doing it consciously. And if they are aware of it, and if they are still binging consciously, they can do it with awareness and they can do it with observation, because that helps them learn more about themselves. And when we understand ourselves, that's when we have ownership of our life and we can actually create change. It comes down to the question of what impact am I having on myself, and even what impact am I having on those around me? It's questioning with, again, curiosity and compassion. Understanding and seeing where you're judging yourself, where you're judging others, where you're making stories about your worth, where you're making stories about other people, where you're putting labels on people when you don't have enough information to actually know if that's the truth. Getting stuck in the logistics can often come down to controlling, obsessing, and getting stuck on these things instead of allowing ourselves to move forward to something new. Awareness is not about blaming yourself, and it's not even about blaming other people. Awareness is about seeing clearly. And once you see things clearly, once you see the situation clearly, then you can take ownership and self-responsibility, which brings us to our 3rd step. You cannot take responsibility of something that you are not aware of. The things that we are responsible of are our actions, also our inactions or our avoidance of actions. It is taking responsibility of our words and our lack of words, our avoidance of conversations, and our silence. Taking ownership of the impact of that on ourselves, but also on other people. And through observing, through becoming aware, that's where we begin understanding what is mine and what is someone else's. Because that's how we understand, what do I actually deserve to have self-responsibility over? What is actually mine to have ownership of and take accountability for? And without those first two steps, you can't fully see what is yours to be responsible for. Becoming self-responsible, this step is also really about understanding the situation more. Because you have this new awareness, you are open to continuing to observe a situation. That's where it helps you understand, maybe I stepped into a friendship or a relationship with someone who actually doesn't align with my values. But I wasn't able to understand that until I opened myself up to this new awareness that came in, and now I'm reflecting to understand, where am I responsible? What role am I playing? And how is this all unfolding? And how can I use this understanding to be responsible for my life? If you're continuously in friendships and relationships where you are overgiving, that's something for you to be self-responsible of. That's often a pattern of you abandoning yourself for other people. And that is not on other people. Sure, yes, they could be aware themselves and take ownership of the fact that they let you give to them. Sometimes the things shaping our lives is not actually the things that we are doing or the things we have done. Oftentimes it's the things we're avoiding, the difficult conversation with someone that we love. Understanding that you crossed your own boundaries by letting someone else cross your boundaries and then never speaking up on it. Having this sense of self-responsibility at first may feel uncomfortable, but over time, it gives you peace. It gives you this assurance of, this is my life and I deserve to feel fulfilled, to feel happy, to feel loved, to feel seen and considered by the people around me. And so when we can reflect and open ourselves up to these first three steps, where now we're understanding of what the situation actually is, not through a lens of judgment, not through a lens of making myself or the other person the bad guy, but through a genuine sense of curiosity and care and openness, so that we can create change for the betterment of everyone involved here. From this space of self-responsibility, now you can move forward to creating intentional change. Step 4, intentionality. So now that I can actually see clearly, who do I want to be here? Who do I want to show up as? Who is the woman or man or person that I want to be? Because this is an opportunity and an invitation for me to be that person. And the more moments that we show up with that self-responsibility of our life in these experiences that we have, the more that we become that person deep in our bones. In situations, we can observe then, how do I want to respond here? I want to respond from love and curiosity and compassion and openness. Whereas if we didn't go through this observation work, we may just react. And we may not like the way we react, or we may judge and blame other people for the way that we react instead of taking that ownership. And most importantly, how do we want to move forward from here? I want to move forward from here more aligned with my values, more respecting of myself and my boundaries. I want to move forward with love, and sometimes that means letting people go and letting them go on their own path. Sometimes that means showing up and having the hard conversation, because that comes from love. When we can come from awareness instead of our old conditioned patterns that caused us to react and be a version of ourselves that wasn't actually true to who we are. It came from the pain that we went through that we hadn't taken responsibility for in our life previously. Yes, sometimes pain happens coming from the outside, but we still have the power to have responsibility to take the next step towards making sure that we are living a life aligned with who we are. That's what is in our power. It's focusing on what is actually in my control versus what's not in my control. If I show up with love to have a hard conversation with someone I care about and they don't show up, that doesn't mean anything about me. Their actions mean nothing about me. It means everything about them. What matters about me is how I chose to show up, how I chose to take accountability and self-responsibility, how I chose to reflect on the situation. Intentionality is not forcing things. It is choosing, and it is allowing everyone else to have that same opportunity. And acknowledging that some people are not yet to that point, and that's okay. We don't need to make stories or judgments about them. We can focus our energy on what we are creating, because at the end of the day, that's what you deserve. You deserve to create a life that is aligned with who you are. And so you have to focus your energy on me, who I am being, and creating intentions from there. So these are the first 4 steps. Observing until you come to new awareness, then taking self-responsibility through reflection of those awarenesses, and then moving into intentions, intentional choices for how you want to create your life from here. This is how you take ownership of your reality. This is how you change your life. And it happens one step at a time. So if you're new to this work, be compassionate with yourself while you're in the observation stage. Be understanding that there's a reason you became the way that you are today, and you can hold love for yourself without allowing yourself to be a version of yourself that you don't agree with. You can have compassion and at the same time understand that's not for me. You don't change your life by trying harder. You change your life by allowing yourself to see more clearly. Because clarity makes intentional change possible. To wrap this message up today, first of all, I want to say thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for doing the work that is hard. The work that a lot of people don't want to show up for. Thank you for choosing that for you. And thank you for choosing that for this world, for this collective. Because every step you make, however small, however big, creates a ripple. And I am so proud of you for doing that and showing up. I know personally, it's not easy all the time. But you are still doing it, and you are still here. I'd love to invite you into one last little reflection. Where in your life have you been forcing change or trying to force change before you actually allowed yourself to slow down and observe? I love you so much, and I wish you the most beautifully aligned day.